Good morning, fellow hat nerds. Again, I don't know how this audio is happening. Like, I was a little scared about this one because I'm using brand new software, as you can tell by the watermark here. It's the free version of StreamYard. Shout out to Morgan for recommending the software. But I'm so psyched about this show today because remember, if you guys seen some of my past shows, um, I'm somebody that has like really started conversations off by showing you my hat. But I know that that's only, it's basically finite, right? I only have so many hats to show you. Really, the whole purpose of that is to serve as a straw man, right? And really, what I wanted to do this channel to be is a conversation with me and my fellow hat nerds. And I was hoping to bring on guests here, and I'm really pleased this punch because I feel like I got a really solid, great first guest who's across the pond in the UK. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to see if I do this without breaking anything. No promises. Remember, I'm brand new at this. Especially the software. So there might be some technical difficulties here at the moment. But what I'm gonna do is essentially, yeah, Morgan, welcome. I'm gonna show you one of the features. Morgan says already tuned in. Shout out to Morgan, who's one of our faithful moderators. I don't know if you caught the last show, but in addition to Morgan, who's my very first inaugural moderator, I also added Ian from London. So shout out. Hey, speaking of, Ian, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. These are our two moderators. Ian, you weren't here to stick around, but you got promoted to moderator in absentia, right? Hopefully that's okay with you. You don't need to there's no formal duties. Essentially, because you guys are my regular listeners, what I wanted to do is make sure I have at least, now I think it's functional because we have Morgan in New York City, and then we got Ian in London, and I feel like they are great ambassadors of this hat culture. So I'm basically just making sure that I take care of you guys. And then Ian, of course, ever the gentleman, says I am honored. Ian, the honor is really with me because you guys really are what makes this show. So I have a real treat for you guys today. I think you kind of met this gentleman already. So essentially, again, I think this is probably, you can't get a better first guest. So I'm just going to bring out Paul here. Hopefully this works. Again, everybody will have to kind of excuse me if we have technical difficulties. It's not Paul's doing. It's totally my era. But hopefully it goes without a hitch, right? And obviously my faithful moderators, you guys let us know if something goes off. We'll see. We'll play it by ear. Anyway, I'm going to invite Paul on here and just kind of get this conversation started. And you guys, at some point, once we go through our intro, I'll get you guys. I'll open it up to you guys, whoever's live here. If you guys want to ask any questions of either myself or Paul, I think Paul is going to be a lot more of the target here. But let's welcome.
Hey,
Paul. Hey, how's it? How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Hi, Morgan. Hi, Ian. Nice to spend some time with you all.
Paul, thank you so much for coming on here. I mean, your channel, and I made mention of this, but for any viewers that we might have that hadn't tuned into that episode, essentially what I basically described, which was really the truth. I was a subscriber, I believe, on a different channel name before Good Luke started. And, and I'm actually going to go, and Morgan already started off. Great. That's a beauty, Paul. Look at that. I'm assuming that's a Paul special. That's a PJ Murphy and Son.
It's 100% beef for fur from FEPSA, but I just had to make it into a nice high-fronted classic hat, and it just wears well, in my opinion.
It looks good. Yeah, it looks good, and we got a lot of fans of the High Crown. I think you already know that. It basically is, in my time in the Fedora Lounge, in my time on Hats and Guitars with Kevin Gerber, I basically, that's where I got more of the appreciation. I came at it maybe from a different angle. You know, again, my hat journey was one where my style is definitely favors that low crown style. And that's kind of the later stages of the hat game, right? And in hat culture, when probably my guess has always been, once the automobile started becoming accessible to folks, and you know, we had that prosperity, hat makers responded by kind of making that crown lower, and making these little tweaks to kind of salvage. And we know that a lot of them didn't survive still, even as they responded to the market. But we still got so many folks that are real big fans of the high crown. Paul, I know you're one of them. And you know, for me, that's where I enjoy. Like I said, I feel like I have my niche in terms of, like, maybe there might be others that you know, maybe not, or that's not their style, but I really love it. I think it looks really sharp. Obviously, it's a nod to yesteryear. You know, for when the high crown was really in its heyday. I believe that was pre-1940s, or I want to say 40s and earlier. But you know, Paul, obviously, you know, I'm no expert. I never claimed to be one. Anybody here that comes into you know, that comes into the oh, look at this. Ian says, I have hat envy. Hey, you know what? The high crown does that to people, I tell you. Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Beauty here, you see. I love the profile. You know, it's just a bit of fun. You know, these are lovely lovely felts from Fepsa over in Portugal, and this one, for instance, is not an overly expensive felt. It's a 5% beaver and 95% rabbits, and it's a really soft sort of 120, 140 gram weight, and it's just lovely and soft. And then put a little bit of stiffener into the brim, and you know, you got a great shape. You know, it's a fun shape.
That looks really, that's a classic shape, right? That teardrop in that.
It's sorry about the bald head, but hey, that's one of the reasons I have to wear hats. But you know, it's just pretty cool, I think, you know.
Yeah. See, this is so before we get, you know, too far into it, I'm just gonna go basically ask you one question, Paul, which is, you know, please describe for the viewers. I'm sure a lot of folks already know you by reputation and on your time on the various social media. But how did you, like, please describe your hat journey, you know, as best and as much as you want to share in terms of your hat journey.
Yeah, I'm a couple of years back, I had a bit of a health scare. I've got a mark on the top of my forehead, and I guess myself and the kids, the family, we spent a lot of time in the sun on the beach, near to where we live. And I went to the doctors, and they said, look, you know, we better test that out. And fortunately, it wasn't cancerous, but they said, look, because I've actually been follically challenged, let's put it that way, since I was about 18 years old. I've always either had a baseball cap or nothing on there, and frankly, they just said, look, no, you know, I'm in my late 60s now. You've actually got to wear a hat and cover up your head. And so my journey was very much, well, actually, I wear a sports jacket and trousers or a suit on the odd occasion. I can't wear a baseball cap with that. So I started looking at what type of hats might suit me and where do I find them from. And in the UK, it was quite difficult. It seemed to be a sort of polarization of some really nice hat shops in London. Of course, Lock & Co, Herbert Johnson, Bates, Laird, and a few others. And they were charging quite a lot of money for hats that I'm not really sure would actually suit me, because I didn't know what would suit me. And then I found, you know, the online auction houses like eBay and Vinted we have over here. And I started looking at secondhand hats. And so I bought a few, and the reason I bought them was really to find out a bit more about them, because I didn't even know about materials. And you know, I thought that every hat was made of wool. And our family suffers from allergies. If I put a wool hat on, then I come out in hives or marks, you know. So I thought, I don't know what to do here. So anyway, I ordered a few hats up that were rabbit felt or mixed or classic older hats. And they arrived, and they were in terrible condition, and not so much worn, but just they've been on the top of a wardrobe for years, or they've been crushed in a box, or I'm sure we've all seen them on eBay or Vinted. And so I thought, how am I going to try and invigorate this and see whether I can bring this hat back to life? And actually, I found Kevin Gerber's site and started looking at those videos. I then found Robert Gault and his site and his recommendations, and also I went on several other YouTube channels, and I just researched more and more, and I started to bring these hats back. But what I found also, they said they were my size, but actually they're about half a size or a whole size too small.
Yes.
So then I very quickly learned that hats over the years, if they get into sunlight, if they get dried out indoors on a radiator or something, they shrink down. And so I then invested in a stretcher, and then I invested, in a proper steamer. So I've gone through the kettle in the kitchen to a hand steamer, to an iron, to a professional steamer, and now the Jiffy steamer, the iron steamer, the whole shebang, But the point being that I probably did, must be 80 to 100 hats that were restored, and I even went to the point where you could stretch a hat out by about half a size, but then after that point, you'd have to deconstruct it and stretch the felt, put new grosgrain and trimmings on, and also new leather sweatbands. And when I started doing that, of course, I was researching manufacturers that could supply the raw materials here in the UK. And that was very interesting, because I then found out that we actually had a very big, lively hat history in this country, in a place called Luton, which is just outside London, to the north of London, and also in and around Manchester. And so I went to see one or two of these manufacturers that are left, and there aren't many left, to be honest. And I found out more and more, and what became obvious was that their skills in that were dying. I mean, Boone and Lane is a company, just as an example, that makes these wooden blocks. And they make them to order for most companies around the world, globally. And, there's two people in that business, and they've been going for, I don't know, best part of 70 or 80 years in the family. And when these two gentlemen, who are nearing retirement age, retire, they've got nobody to take it over, and they've got nobody in there to come and take on the skills. And this really concerned me, because I thought, that's really a shame, and I came away thinking, well, what can I do? And I thought, well, I'm restoring and I'm deconstructing and I'm rebuilding. Why don't I try and buy some felt and make some hats? And in fact, when I do something, I like to be able to see if I could find the best materials, because what I found is, if you work with the best materials, you've got half a chance of making something that people are going to want, because it's going to probably look right, feel right, and so on. And then I researched a number of different companies around the world, and in fact, I found FEPSA for the felts in Portugal. And then I learned that there is a series of weights of felt. So going from lightweight, where you can actually make a hat that you can roll up and put in your pocket, to dress weights, from sort of 120 through to 180 grams, and then you go on to Western weight, which is a real sort of heavyweight, where you can make things like the open roads that are really, I mean, that one's 240 grams, and it's a 60% rabbit, 40% beaver. So, and then, of course, I was absolutely shocked at the price of some of these felts. I mean, oh dear, I've got some felts here, some beaver felts that are bright colours that are like £300 a felt before you even start making a hat. But I don't tell my wife that, all right? So
nobody tells Paul's wife. It's our secret, right? So we have to keep this. We have to keep Paul in good standing. You saw how smooth his head was. We want to keep his head looking nice and not lumpy.
So thank you. Yeah. So the journey really was a fun one of trying things out, getting to know people online. It was great. Kevin Gerber, great guy. I spoke to him a few times on the phone. I respect what he's doing, and I think he's really trying to help the hat market over in America. So in my little way, what I liked was what I didn't find in the UK was somebody that made hats of the style from the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. So the higher crown and the more traditional styles, and anybody that was sort of bringing them up to the UK modern day, if you like. And I thought, well, why don't I have a go at doing that? And so that's what I've really tried to be doing, is something that I know that if I make a hat that I like, the chances are other people like it as well, because that sort of happened over the years, and it's been and so far it's been a good journey. And the other thing was that when I started looking at the sort of boutique hat makers in the UK, people like myself, that just one or two people making hats from home, you know, a limited number, etc. You know, there weren't many of them that what I could see that actually had hats on the shelf. And so
Yeah.
I made a decision that that I would make up a lot of hats, not necessarily going to be the size of the people that people wanted, but at least it would showcase a lot of I can do. Thanks, Morgan. You're probably better off looking at the hat, actually. Anyway, and I guess I'm in a position where I've invested money from the restoration of the hats into the equipment, and also into and so I've got industrial sewing machines, and I've got regular sewing machines, steamers. I even got the press that does all of the gold blocking inside the leather, and so on. So we're totally sort of self-sufficient, really. And I keep about 60 or 70 hats in stock that I've actually made. And then I've probably got 120 to 150 felts in stock at any one time. So it's nice because now I can give people the way I work is people look at the website, look at my eBay shop, or look at my YouTube channel, get in touch. I'll suggest to them that we have a Zoom call, and then I say, look, this is going to sound really odd, but I'm going to ask you about 20 or 30 questions about a hat. And they say, a hat? I want a hat. I said, you know what? I wanted a hat when I first started this journey, but actually there's so many things I need to know. You know, what are you going to use the hat for? We're going to wear it for. You know, is it formal? Is it for going out shooting? Is it for going to work? Are you going to wear it with a suit, with jeans, t-shirt? Do you want it to be? Is it going to be your only hat, and therefore you want it to do lots of different things? Are you a collector? Is this something new? And so when I start taking them, yeah, you're quite right. You're quite right, Ian. It does. I think when you start getting talking with somebody, you almost become like a tailor making a suit, and a bespoke suit at that. And so you learn a bit more about the person, their lifestyle, what they're looking for in the hat. And actually, whenever I've done this, it's really odd. You know, I've done it quite a few times now, but I've got somebody that's, for instance, on their 8th hat from me now, because apparently they just love the journey, and they just love the fact that we can go to a studio here or outside and look at the different ribbons. I probably keep, I don't know, 50 different ribbons in stock, in different colors and things, and the felts and so on. And I think when you're, and it's predominantly men that I'm dealing with at the moment rather than women, but it seems that they get to a certain age, men, and they want to spend money because they've earned it, and they want to reward themselves. And this is just one way of helping to make a statement, as well as having something that I happen to think wearing a hat is fabulous, because I think it extends your personality. Whenever I go around with a hat, I either get positive, not very often negative words, but it opens up a conversation. And I think that's lovely because, you know, it's quite difficult sometimes. We're a bit standoffish in the UK, and so a bit more outward. And I think when people see that you're wearing a hat, they know that, you know, you're not a wallflower or whatever we call them here in the UK.
Right.
You know?
You're not cookie cutter.
You're not a cookie cutter. Yeah. So I hope that gives you an idea that, you know, I've gone through a couple of years of teaching myself, listening to people that are already in the marketplace. I don't profess to know everything at all. I'm still on my journey. Every day I'm learning. But I also do, you know, a full-time. I've got a number of other businesses that I work in on a part-time basis. So this isn't my full-time role, but I do make probably one hat every 3 days. So so I'm constantly you know, making hats. I've got a waiting list, albeit very small, but it's just a lovely business to be in, and you meet some really good people.
Yeah, I completely agree, Paul. See, I mean, there's so many questions that came into my mind as you were describing your hat journey. The one thing I will like, my next thing was essentially what you described that really hit home is that when you sell somebody a hat, right, there's the process that you guys undergo together, right? And in many ways, they're buying a piece of Paul, right? So like when they're going through that, the way you carry yourself, Paul, and the questions that you ask, like they're probably like, hey, they probably started off just asking, you know, maybe casually, but by the end of the interaction, they probably like, you know what? I just don't know how else I can thank Paul than essentially, you know, buying one of his hats. And I think you described it with, whether people know it or they don't. I feel like when I say this, everybody that is seeing this will probably nod, because you're buying it in many ways, not just a hat. You're buying a piece of Paul when you buy one of his creations. And there's something that's really touching about that, that connection between a consumer and their hatter, right? Very similar to the way you mentioned, and your tailor, and whoever else that you have that kind of connection with. You are doing that because you respect Paul so much, and you respect his craft, that you just want to figure out a way to obviously, you mentioned about like the high price of this. There's so many other things that you do and you have to do, because maybe the money is not sustainable. But I think we as consumers and in this hat culture, we know that and we recognize it. So we want to kind of support the business, because unfortunately, not everybody lives forever. That's why I really love the fact that you have PJ Murphy and Son. And I don't know if you want to go into any details about like how that came about, but that really was intriguing. I was really touched by that.
Yeah, I think part of it was that I wanted to create a brand. I've created several brands and businesses over the years, and I thought I wanted this to be a boutique business that eventually my vision is my wife and I are going to move to a bigger house with the ability to put a studio in the grounds and have people over, so I can actually have hat making events, and people can come over for 2 or 3 days, stay locally and really enjoy the experience. And then I become their mentor, if you like. If they want to make more hats, I'll help them. But what I really want to do is I want to be able to leave my mark, and my mark really is to try and not lose the skills that there are around in making hats. And I think the thing that's very interesting at the moment, I think, is the value and price of hats, because you touched on it slightly there, and that is that the one I'm wearing, for instance, 100% beaver hat. Most people, I was looking at Lock & Co's site yesterday, an absolute bare hat with no grosgrain and no trim. They want just under £700 for. And you look at Nick Fouquet over in America, when he's making one of his style hats, his fedoras, they're $1,500 and up to $2,500. So what makes it different? And a part of that it's about brand building. It's about many years ago, when I was more in the luxury good area, it was all to do with the amount of money that they had coming in from the profit they were making on their products, like jewelry or watches or perfumery, that they'd have to then plow back into the brand building, and then that would then help them command a much higher price for their hats. And that's really so the marketplace. They either have to go and support people like myself, who are never going to have the budget that Nick Fouquet and other people have, and never be able to really put a brand together that is going to be so big. But we can still buy felts from the same supplier as they do. We can still buy the trimmings and things, and then it's down to the individual creativity of the hat maker. And I think that there are lots of small hat makers around that have got some great ideas and great styles. And I think if we all pick a style and become expert, if you like, in that style, then of course we'll do other styles as well. But I mean, being known for a particular style, I think, will help us make a business that hopefully will help a lot of the smaller ones actually be able to survive and make a living.
Right. And I think you hit the nail right on the head so one thing you guys know, like, or should know, like, there's no compensation here. Like, obviously I'm strictly doing this so that, one, because I respect Paul's craft and I respect his channel so much that I felt like already, like I already learned a lot. And so I get something out of this. Obviously Paul's in the business, but Paul, like, if you look at his prices, and this is, again, not endorsed by Paul, his prices are some of the most reasonable that I've seen. Again, I'm not an expert in the British pound, but I'm looking at those and I'm seeing a lot of ones in front of the number, and that to me screams that, okay, this is a hatter that is really, he's doing this with a love, right? And just right away, Paul plugged in Robert Galt at Wolfbray. and as well as Kurt Gerber of KTG. And, my assumption there, you're probably not getting a kickback from them. You know what I mean? Like, this is what we do because we are brethren, right? We are brothers in the hat in this subculture. And we do this because not to get a buck, not that there's anything wrong with money. I have no problem with money, but we do this for more than that because, well, we love this. It means that much to us. So thank you, Paul, for being a great ambassador for that. And, not that we don't have some jerks in here, but I just find that this subculture has way many more like quality folks. And I don't know if it's a chicken or egg, Paul, to be honest, if it's something that, really good folks just happen to be attracted to this hobby, or, this hobby just makes you want to be a better person. And I always feel like it's both, right? It's an iterative process where you just you have such respect and high regard of your fellow hat enthusiast that you don't want to let them down, right? And I always tell them, after you, Paul.
Sorry, Luke, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was going to add that, I've got some of my customers, in fact, quite a lot of my clients, clearly they are moneyed individuals, and one or two of them have got hat collections of 40, 50, 60 hats, and other of my clients, I had one I was talking to today, and the gentleman and I have been talking, and he's told me the style of hat he wants, and I've talked him through the felts and things, and it turns out that it's probably going to be his only hat, and he's been wearing hats for a long time, and he's going to have to save up for it for a few months. And I think, you know what, that makes me want to do an even better job for him, and actually, trying to do something special for him too, because it would be lovely to feel that he's saved up for such a long time, he's rewarded himself and got it, and that he's happy with what he gets. I mean, that's a nice thing to do.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Paul. And there's that old adage that says buy right or buy twice, right? And luckily we have a lot of folks here, right, that some of them made they killed it in their respective industry of choice, right, where they started off at. And I find like the story it repeats itself. It's kind of like, okay, I was, for lack of a better term, I'm going to use Titan of industry, right? But I did quite well for myself in my first chosen career. But now that opened the door for me to do what I really love, or both, or many. If you have, Paul, you mentioned that you had several businesses. I don't know how you find the energy to do hat making, but God bless, because I think it keeps you young. And you have to respect that. Like, regardless of what you feel, you have to respect it. And I think that respect, it just permeates throughout the hobby, right?
I hope so. I mean, it's been a very nice experience for me so far, and I hope that it continues. And I think it takes me anything between 3 and 5 hours to make a hat, depending on what sort of hat, depending whether you're using the traditional shellac. And I try and use all the traditional tools and traditional processes in the making of the hats, because again, I think that's as important as the hat, and explaining to people how you're doing. And you're right, Ian, it would. And I think the other thing is helping the customer understand about the looking after of the hat. So what I have been doing, and I don't know what the time will allow me as I go on, but I've been making videos of actually making the hats for my customers, so that they not only get the hat, they actually get a video of me making it and the different stages. And so it's a 30-minute video, and it's like the bragging rights of somebody that, and it all started because I had a client who it happened to be himself wanting to buy a hat for his own birthday present. And I thought, oh, that's terrific, and he said, look, I've got the family coming around. I really want to make it special, Paul. I thought, what? I'm going to make him a video that tells the story, and he can then put it on the TV or whatever in front of his family, and if that's what he wants to do, and show him. And he was over the moon. In fact, he's ordered 3 more hats since then. So
I love it.
Wow, but I think it's stuff like that. It's like Hornscoff and Hufford. They are over here in Europe as well, and they make some absolute fabulous hats. But things like the packaging and the story and only people like myself can only really aspire to be, operating at their level. But it is so lovely to see what they're doing. And with the media that we've got, with social media and with YouTube, it gives us all a platform that, I mean, I never thought at my age that I'd ever pick up a camera. I've been used to being on the board of a number of companies and having very big budgets, and then having a whole marketing team of 20 people. And now it's me, no budget, and in front of a camera. It's like, okay, you have to these days, throw yourself into it and have a go.
Yeah, Paul, thank you so much for like everything you do. And because again, I know you're not doing that just by meaning you are not the only one that does that. There's so many of your peers that do the same. And it's good to have choice, right? We always talk about like the paradox of choice. I happen to be okay with that problem of having too many choices of a great hatter like yourself, a Hornscov or a Huffbud, right? Or a KTG hat and all the other Wolfbray and all the other great hatters that exist out there. D-Bar-J, I had a hat. He's based out of Vegas. I want to have that choice, even if I can't afford to support them all. I know that if I'm able to advertise for them and introduce them to somebody, and hopefully some people, they will only deal with somebody in their neck of the woods. That's what's great about this and having such a global community and this small community, but having the internet, right? You might not know, like somebody like Ian. Ian is in London. I don't know if you guys knew each other before you guys came on the channel, but now you guys know each other, and maybe Ian will be somebody that becomes a regular fixture. And that's the reason. That really is the beautiful part about this YouTube and this small community, and the fact that we all want to go out and find our tribe, right? And it's so much easier now, right? Thanks to the internet. It's a beautiful thing. And what I'm going to do now, actually, I think we already got questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, and I'm fiddling with this stuff to kind of, I'm still learning, but I'm going to just call this Q&A. So we already got a question from Morgan, and I'll start off, and you guys feel free to chime in. I'll just ask that if, obviously, my moderators are going to keep it respectful. Keep it respectful and keep it hat related, and if it's something that borders lines on, Paul can make a, decision as to whether he wants to, speak on it. But we got our first question. It's from Morgan.
Yes. In one simple answer, yes, Morgan. I mean, I've got hat blocks that go up to a 61, and I have a stretcher that could stretch it out to a 62. But actually, what I tend to do is, if I find that I'm being asked to make a hat for the first time and it's going to be out of the sort of size of blocks that I've got, I'll go and commission another block and pay for that. And the blocks to me are about £200. So that gives you some idea. But I'm prepared to make the investment to get a size block. And then what I get is, I'll just show you, just 1 second. On the this is quite a high block. Okay, so what I do is I get them made to this height and obviously staged up or down as the side goes. But then I've got an 18mm board that I cut a template of the oval into the board, and so I can drop that in, so it reduces the crown size by 18mm. In effect, that gives me double the amount of blocks for the one investment. So I get good value out of doing what I'm doing.
Well, it sounds like Morgan is on her way to becoming a customer, Paul. Shout out to Morgan. Morgan's 19. I don't know if you knew this, Paul.
Unreal.
She's 19 years old, out of New York City.
Fantastic. Yeah, I wish I had all those years back to be able to enjoy not only hat making but hat wearing. So yeah.
Correct. Same here. Like I found, I got on my hat journey into middle age. So it's not been that long, but it's like I said the same thing, Paul. Where have you been all my life? Hat, but I'm just happy that I'm still, I'm still above ground, and I still am able to do something like this. And this is like my little contribution to the hat culture that has like embraced me. It really is kind of a labor of love. I just find that I got up and I have always wanted to do this. And I got up one day, I came back from my walk and I said, I'm doing it. I don't care if nobody listens to me, I'm doing it, and I'm going to take a chance. And look at this. If you asked me a couple weeks ago that I was going to have a legitimate hatter on here from the other side of the pond, you know, from the UK, I mean, I would have called myself crazy. But you know, it's one of those things like, you gotta put yourself out there sometimes to be able to go. You know, I think the Lotto saying, and you got to be in it to win it, right? So you have to kind of put it out there to kind of take that first step. And then Morgan says here, yes, most definitely. I'm really liking the hat he's wearing. I'd ask for a splitting image if that's okay with you, Paul.
It's a fairly classic hat. I'd need to get some more felt in for this one because it's but you see this is interesting because this is a hat that's been made out of beaver felt, but I've got let me just put that back on a second. I have just got some more in for a customer. So we've got this this felt, which is this is a 5% beaver and 95% rabbit, and it's about a 170 gram weight, and it's pounced, which means it's been smoothed and so on. And actually, this is obviously from FEPSA, and they do different sizes in the crown here, so you can get a small, a medium, and a large, and then you steam them and stretch them. And you know, I could make this hat in this felt, and it'll be a lot cheaper. So I mean, if I look at this one here, so this one it's like that. It's this is the 170. So let me just pop that one on. I've got a wall of hats in front of me, so you know, it's
oh yeah, I like the hat tilt.
So this is you know, quite a big, in fact I think it's an 8 centimeter brim. Let's just have a quick look. It's the crown height is 12 centimeters and the actual brim size is 7.5 centimeters. So it's, for the UK, this is a really sort of stepped up hat. You know, it's really quite wide. But I'm quite a big guy. I've got a 50-inch chest. I'm pretty, you know, and I'm over 6 foot. So this with a 1940s overcoat really makes, you know, I walk in the room with this and it's like, okay, all right, this means business.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. See, that's, thanks for verbalizing that, because that's something that I don't know. Like, I think anybody that wears a hat, and then obviously you have the folks like on the Fedora Lounge, there's a gentleman called Fabio von Horst. I believe, hopefully I didn't butcher that, but he dresses up to the nine and he's very like sharp, and it just makes you like a fine hat will make you want to, obviously I have a much more casual dress and casual style, but it really makes you want to do that because you're like, you almost want to respect the hat, right? You want to respect the fine hat and do the whole thing the whole way.
Yeah, I think so. I think what I'm looking forward to doing is sort of pushing the boundaries a bit in terms of you know, the different materials and the different styles. And what I mean by that is that, and I'll show you something. Last year I wanted a hat for winter, but I wanted something that was quite heavyweight. So I took heavyweight Western felt of about 240 grams and made this, which is obviously a fedora, but it's a really thick felt. So the point being that it's extremely warm and you know, just a really nice felt. You know, it's just different. And I guess because traditionally the Western felts would be used for Western style hats, of course. But we've got things like these are.
That's a beauty. I saw that on your website. Beautiful hat.
So these are becoming more popular, you know, for the youngsters to sort of wear them a bit back like this, and probably put, you know, a jean shirt on or whatever, you know. There we go. Yeah. I think that's lovely to be able to dress up and wear something that's you know, really quite sort of traditional and formal. You know,
style meets function. That's what I say, right? It's one of those things where these started off as the reason why hat culture exists is because, well, there was a functional basis, right? Paul mentioned he's follically challenged. I'm not, but it doesn't mean that, right? We have, like, just like we talk about master motives, just because we have multiple motives for why we are into hats. It doesn't mean that one can't be served by another. And it's just part of the beauty of like being in this hat subculture, right? You get to do both, and it's like, all right, if I'm going to go out for a walk, like which I do basically every day, as long as the weather allows me, and then now that I have a collection of fine hats, I'm able to go out there and maybe brave some weather that otherwise I would not if I didn't have a fine hat and look good. Hopefully, I think I look good. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's an opinion.
I think by having a hat collection, it's a good idea to invest in some good hat care products, like a very basic steamer. In the UK, I guess you've got them in America as well, but we have these handheld steamers that are about so high, and they can take about a pint of water, and then they do a limited amount of steam pressure, but they're really quite good just to look after 2 or 3 hats. And of course, what you also want is good brushes. So these are 3 different stiffnesses from something that's very stiff, where if somebody comes to me with a hat that hasn't been looked after for many years and is quite caked with, it's a stiff one, then a medium, and then a very soft one, which is curved. I don't know if you can see that. It's curved round so that actually you can go around the brim, with a curved anti-clockwise motion, and that then once you've got the dirt up, you can and you'd be amazed at how much a little bit of steam and a little bit of brushing brings the hat back to what it was formerly. Because I was saying this to somebody else the other day, that a lot of older hats, they actually have shellac or some other stiffener in them, but over the years, when you handle them, they lose their stiffness. But introduce some steam and it will come back. Excuse me. It will come back to a reasonable level. So steam is your best friend if you just use it sparingly.
Yeah. That's kind of my motto. I've gotten away, like I've avoided, and Paul, you might have heard this. It's not something, it's just kind of my own laziness and my view of like hats. I've gotten away with just the hat brush. But I feel like the hat brush and the steamer are like you're probably your starter kit in terms of hat care. Paul, I don't know if you have any other recommendations beyond that.
Yeah, I do actually. It's if you look at this hat block, it's a hat block that I think is that's a 56 centimeter, so probably about 7 over in America. And what I suggest is that you can pick these up for a fairly cheap price in the UK, about £70 with a stand. And the reason why I say it's good is because you can get hold of your hat, and if you're let's say you're a 58 or a 59, then your hat will fit over the top with the leather sweatband on, okay? And then you can push it down so that you can actually push against this to get all of the dust out of, especially where the creases are and things, you see?
Yeah.
And so you pull it over to here, and you can then start to brush it and get it nice and clean, putting some steam on it, and then you can start forming it back into the crown shape that it was originally. And ultimately, you want one of these behind me, which is a brim block. So now brim blocks are made, as you can imagine, in lots of different shapes and sizes. And there's a brim block stand. I use a company called Guy Morse here in the UK, and these the stands come off separately, and then you can interchange the brim block. So the brim block, all it is the shape that you want your brim in, and it's the various sizes of hats can go in here. So this one will do probably a 58 up to about a 61. Okay. And so if I was doing a 62, then I'd have to probably invest in another one of these brim blocks, these are about £200 or £300 each. So about £500 to invest in the actual equipment. But they then allow you to really put shape back in the brim, and that's where you can lose quite a lot of definition in the hat, of course, without it.
Well, we just got a pro tip from a pro. So there you go. I mean, I think I have a question here from Morgan. So I mean, I'll just.
This is a I think it's the light. I don't know whether it makes any difference if I turn that light off a second, whether you can see that. Yeah, it's a sort of a camely browny color, and its height on the crown is 12.5 centimeters. So in inches, that's 5 inches. So it's a real big one at the front,
Yeah.
and it's about 4.5 inches at the back. So there is a nice profile going from front to back. It's got quite a nice definition. Being beaver, it's quite soft, if you like, and I've put a little bit of stiffener in to give it a little bit of definition.
Yeah.
Two nice dents at the front there. I haven't gone too mad on them, and then the grosgrain is a 38mm bronze coloured grosgrain. I think
Beautiful.
for me, bronze is quite a good color at the moment because it's unusual, yet it looks quite sharp. And one of my little trademarks on my bow is that a lot of my fellow hat makers they cut back and don't have double bow here, so I have a double thickness here and a double thickness there, and I go longer, and I make my bow up and my surrounding ribbon in one, so that's all done in one piece, and it goes all the way around the hat, and then I sew it on by hand. The actual grosgrain around the brim here is a 15mm grosgrain. It's a Petersham grosgrain, and I actually have a little adapter on my sewing machine which allows me to feed it in, and then allows me to go around. A lot of hatters do it by hand. That takes an awful lot of time and skill, and I decided to go the route of the machine. But all of these are actually sewn on, and then what perhaps you didn't know was that once it's on there might be a few gaps around here. So what you do is you actually use a steam iron. So you use steam to actually steam the grosgrain, and it contracts in and it gets rid of any of the gaps. There's another little tube. So on the inside, I put a liner, and the liner I used to sew them all in, but actually now I don't, because it's easier to take them out and wash them or whatever. And you know, I don't know whether people want to do that, but also if my customers in a year or two's time they want a replacement liner, it's a lot easier for me to send them one for them to just place it in. And on the liners, I make them so that they've got an opening here, so that they can fit in all the different cattleman and center crease, teardrop, whatever the shape of the crown is. They still manage to fit quite comfortably, really, and still look quite good.
And your logo is beautiful. I love the bird. I don't know if there's a story behind that logo.
There's
but
a small story. I mean, I wanted something that that could actually be encompass what hats are all about. And what hats are about, in my opinion, is helping you be a little bit different, a little bit more of a statement, and free. Free from the norm in society. Okay. And when I looked it up, there was a swallow, is a bird in the UK that sort of allows that and is signified by that. And so I thought, well, I'd find a stylized bird, and I particularly like the multiple colors. And that means different things to different people. I understand that, but to me, I just thought that being a multiple color embroidery, it will go with any any color hat and any color liner. And it's been received well, and I'm pleased, because I then put my signature usually in the, you can see that there, but in the leather as well, so that it's a nice sort of
gorgeous.
But I'm now buying a lot of my leather sweatbands. My latest ones I'm getting from America. They're a lot deeper, about 2 inches rather than the sort of 1.5 inches that we have here in the UK. So that, again, getting a nice sweatband is a nice thing for comfort, The other thing is, of course, the sizing of a hat. When you get the wrong size of a hat, or if you're not sure, or if somebody was buying a hat off of my website and they were perhaps a 59.5 and it's a 60, what I have done is put together the hat material that I use as a material sweatband. So stretchy sweatband material. I make it up to the size of the hat, so that people can then put it behind the leather sweatband, and that takes up about half a size, and to sort of make the hat fit a little bit more snug. So it helps. Thank you, Morgan. That's very kind of you. I mean, it's just it's such a nice thing when people actually appreciate what you're doing. It means the world, because people put a lot of time into doing it. And you know what? The thing is, we don't get it right every time. If I had £1 for every sweatband I took off because I wasn't happy with it, In fact,
Yeah.
I've got this commission I'm doing at the moment. It's a sort of Stratliner type.
That's gorgeous. That's gorgeous.
Yesterday I made the hat up, and I just, it's in 100% rabbit, and I just saw some of the stitches that hold on the sweatband inside,
Right.
and I wasn't happy, so I took it all off and did it all again. And it's just, I look at every hat and I think, would I be happy to wear that myself? And if I'm not happy, then I do it again.
Wow.
It's just the way it is. And that gentleman can wear it either up or down. He's an older gentleman, and we've got the lovely maroon color inside. That was his choice of wanting that in there. And actually, I think it looks absolutely gorgeous. So
it's to die for. Like I said, nobody would be unhappy to have that, regardless of anything, any imperfections. The first thing I said is that's a gorgeous hat. I mean, wow. You kind of blew my mind with that. Like this is what I'm just sitting here, and I'm trying to stay in the conversation, but I'm kind of becoming a little bit of a kid. So you might see this big dumb smile on my face. But this is what we are. We kind of like these hats make kids out of us.
Well, they do, and I think what, one of the fun things I did was that I actually couldn't get an open road. I did. I bought an open road. Yeah, I'd love to, Morgan. We can have a Zoom call and have a chat. But I bought an open road from Stetson, and I bought it secondhand in the UK. It had been imported, and it was too big for me. But lovely hat. But I didn't quite. The felt wasn't. It wasn't. It was nice, but not that nice. And so I started to research the Stetson Open Road, and I started making them in different colors, but not only in different colors, in different weights, so dress weights. And I made like a green, a bottle green color with a dark green trim and so on, and put it up on the Stetson Open Road Lounge. And the number of orders I got from it was just like amazing. I wasn't trying to get orders. It was just like this, and I made the statement, we can't get these in the UK, guys, and when we can, you want £540 for a Stetson 6X, which is like, really? It's just crazy money. So things like this, which is, this I made for myself. It's a silver belly, and it's actually 60% rabbit and 40% beaver, but it's 240 grams. So it actually, what I like about it is that it's not only a nice shape like that, but also you can bring down the brim, and you can wear it into the golf club or whatever. It's still quite a nice casual hat, which you could wear with a sports jacket and trousers, I suppose. But,
it's a classic shape. I mean, it's the open road, right?
It's a nice shape. But like I say, I seem to be hitting the mark with that at the moment, both in the UK and America. So that's nice to know.
I was going to ask you about that, Paul. Do you have like a signature? So would maybe the hat that you're wearing, like do you have like either a one that you're like, okay, this is the Paul, right? You may not call it the Paul, but it's like, this is the hat that if I had to pick one hat.
Yeah, it's probably, it's either this one or this version of it, which is the black one. It's the thing that it's very much like the Johnny Depp type of Porcelino. It's that sort of shape. I've made a few of the copies of the Johnny Depp one in a sort of light blue color. Funny enough, for a few musicians that wanted it for stage work, but I particularly like this, and it's a felt that's 120, 130 grams, I suppose. So it's not heavy. It's just a nice feel to it, and again, you can wear it casually or whatever. But I guess the thing is that when you start making them, you can make whatever you want, and you can wear whatever you want. And it's even down to, what have I got here? This is a much lower crown. I'll just show you this one to show you the sort of differences. So you've got something that's much more, this is much more current, if you like. If I was going out with jeans,
kind of my style right there, the lower crown, and
you can see it's a fairly low crown, And again, you know, the brim can come down, and it's nice on as an alternative to you know, a Panama or something. But the brim's is just not playing up well today. But
Right.
but that's quite a nice sort of lower crown type. I made that. I've got a sort of yellow leather bomber jacket, and I think that's the sort of color that's sort of near to it. So it's cool, you know.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you. So how do you get inspired in terms of like your color schemes? Because I know I'm somebody that, as best as I like try to be coordinated, that would be like an impediment for me. Like, how do I come up with the right colors to blend?
Well, you know, there's at FEPSA, they have a whole range of colors and weights of, and actually you can go on their website and you can see what I'm talking about, and you can get a feel for it. The problem with FEPSA is they don't always make, you know, like 10 colors and keep to them. They make a batch of color and then they sell that out and they go on to the next one and the next one. So it's quite challenging for me to you know, sell hats and have the felt in stock in the color that people want. And I normally buy, you know, if it's a nice color that I like, I might buy 3 or 4 felts and therefore be able to make 3 or 4 different sizes if they like the size that I've made, but it's not theirs, etc. But from the inspiration point of view, I do 2 things. One is I buy the way out colors. Like I've got a leopard print at the moment, which I'm looking at, and I've got some bright blues and some turquoise colors and things. But then they do what's like a surprise box where you can buy a box of 15 to 20 felts for a standard price, and you can try out all their different weights and their different colors and so on. And in there, they send over some stuff that they don't even have on their site. So actually, and this was one of the ones that they sent in that selection. So I always tend to spoil myself and splash out in one of those boxes on top of what I want to stock. And the colors come back, and they, you know, when you look at something, you think that's going to look lovely in a high crown, or that's going to look lovely in a lower one, or that's going to look lovely with a center piece. And it is just like that. It's just really thinking. But these days, I'm of the opinion that you know, if I can only have one weight of felt, it's probably going to be around 160, 170 gram dress weight that sort of forms a lot more like this weight that I was talking about, because this is you know, it's just a lovely weight. So it can take a lot of the wind and the weather, and it still holds a really nice shape. And you know, it's still
gorgeous, Paul. Gorgeous.
It's just a, and you know, it's a bit like Borsellino. The simple designs in the right material look absolutely stunning.
And this is a funny, you know, shout out to Borsellino and all the other great manufacturers that have kind of stood the test of time. Obviously, several of them, Borsellino included, ran on tough times, but luckily they managed to keep that lineage, because we already know we've lost so many great hat manufacturers. And the great thing about this hobby is that we've had our bespoke hatters like yourself that kind of come in there and help fill some of that void. But we need bespoke hatters, just like we need these great brands with the rich tradition. Luckily, Locke is still in business. I believe the oldest hat brand still in existence. And you know, we need all of that stuff, and that's why we need to create brand new hat enthusiasts to support businesses like yourselves, as well as Borsellino and Stetson and all the other hatters that great brands that we still have access. Christie's, Locke, Moore's. Is Moore still in business?
Not aware of that brand in the UK. So
okay, Moore's is I believe a UK brand, because it has London in there. I don't know, but I always wanted to ask that question. I haven't done that research. I'll probably do that independently and maybe report back later. But we have to do that, because if we don't support with our dollars and with our enthusiasm, and then create new hat people, like new hat enthusiasts like Morgan, you know, we're doing ourselves a disservice, because that legacy will die off, and you know, who knows where we'll be. So that's why we owe it to ourselves to make sure that we're regenerating, right, those new hat folks. You know, it might be that 5-year-old that you see on your walk that is on the playground and sees your hat and says, you know what, I like that, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that, as I look further into how I can up the production, because somebody like myself I mean, I probably restore maybe 10 hats a month and maybe make 20 hats a month. So, you know,
Yeah.
my maximum is about 30 to 40 hats a month.
Yeah.
And you know what, I would struggle really to do that on a continued basis. So 250 to 300 hats a year, I guess, of either making or restoring. Now, I've been looking at how can I increase that production, and the
Sure.
way that it's done is that there's Boone and Lane. They make metal blocks, and so they make a block in two halves. So you've got one that actually is a metal block of the shape of the crown of the hat, and one
Yeah.
that's a metal block of the actual underneath and the brim of the hat. And the two come down with a felt in between, and it's steam and it's gas powered. So natural gas with natural flames coming out, and they press it down and away it comes. So people like Rock and Co and Bates and other brands like Thomas Farthing and so on, they will have well, in fact, Thomas Farthing used Rocha, I think, in Spain. But on the whole, what will happen is that they will choose the felt, and then they will get somebody, usually in Luton, where they've got the machinery, to actually knock out a couple of hundred of each size of those felts.
Right.
And they've got them on the shelf at their factory, and then they'll make them you know, in the different sizes. They'll finish them off basically. So
Yeah.
Herbert Johnson, for instance, they'll do that with the tribute hats for Raiders of the Lost Ark and so on. So that's the difference between there you go. That's the
Thank you,
difference
Ian.
between you know, hatters like myself, where, you know, it's difficult for us to afford the metal blocks because they're about £1,500 to buy. And then you've got to have the equipment to actually use them. So we do everything by hand. So we make them as an open crown, and then we form the actual shape of the hat. And that part of what takes the time, of course. But if you've got them already being formed, then what you've got is you've got a uniformity that's almost like clinical in its approach.
Right.
So that's really from a consumer point of view. Do you want something that is, from a clinical point of view, is perfect? Or do you want something that's been handmade specifically for you with a little bit of difference? So you're not going to see any two the same. And that's only for the consumer to make their mind up as to what they want, really.
Holy cow. Paul, I'm like flabbergasted because I'm getting so much. Like I said, this is what I love about this. Besides being a kid in a candy store and getting to see some of your great creations, I always learn something. That's every time I interact with one of my, it doesn't matter what the age bracket, you know how many things Morgan has already taught me that I had no idea about. And this is the benefit for me. And, you know, and I think for everybody that would be interested in this channel, you know, it's one of those things. I'm gonna just make sure I'll ask if anybody has. I mean, I didn't follow up with you, Paul, in terms of how much time you had. I know you're on holiday, so shout out to the UK, and they're on bank holiday today. I love it. Enjoy. You know, I want to make sure I'm respectful of your time, Paul. I know you're a busy man.
I love being on here, and in fact, it's the other way around. I feel I don't want to monopolize the opportunity of speaking with you, because I find, you know, I can talk about hats for hours, and I'm more than happy to share information. This is why, when I was watching a documentary the other day on YouTube that Nick Fouquet had put together, and he was very guarded about his processes and his times. And I think, why? You know, Nick, you make some lovely hats, and actually the design of your hats is where the authenticity and the exclusivity and all those things come to light. And in fact, you've got 15 people working for you, and so you don't need to be as guarded. I mean, he clearly feels he needs to be, and that's a shame, really, because you know, my opinion is that hats are enjoying a little bit of a resurgence, renaissance, whatever you want to call it. They're coming back into fashion, and I think we need more hatters. We just do, you know. You know, I'm just very grateful that I've managed to sell a few hats and do what I'm doing, and I hope it continues. But we need to encourage more people to do it.
Yeah, I completely agree, Paul. I mean, you are, and again, I've never met Nick. I have heard of him by reputation. I believe you mentioned him during one of my live streams, and I know the name. Like it rung a bell. But again, I never, I never begrudge a business or a hatter, especially in the hat industry, for having their preferences. Obviously, I'm a big believer in personal freedom, but I agree with you. I'm of the ilk that believes that we're such a niche community. We want to, beyond like the profit motive and beyond whatever family motive, right? We know that there's multi-generational hatters and artisans out there that, kind of like the Coca-Cola, they're guarding the secret. But at the same time, I'm with you, Paul, in that I'm like, it's a little, I understand the rationale, but at the same time, I'm like the enthusiast in me that really is looking out for the next generation. And who knows, like I said, I'm saying the next generation, but that also includes the Gen Xers, that includes the baby boomers that are still capable of becoming a hatter, right? So it's not just about Generation Z and everybody that comes after that, but hat nerds find their way like into this hobby, into this passion at all times in their life journey, right? We talked about myself, about, I got into this well into middle age, and you never know. And you never know what we have, like that nerd, that hat nerd that can, that you can be influencing. But whatever. I mean, that's why it's great that we have somebody like you, Paul, and some of the other great hatters that don't mind, sharing what regardless of it might be bad for business, Let's see. Morgan says, oh no, Ian says, sadly, I'm somewhat cack-handed. Although I use my youth hats, always get a new ribbon, which I make and attach myself. God bless you. That's better than I've done, Ian. I am, somebody that is, I'm very paranoid, right? I mentioned already, I've confessed that I'm somebody that doesn't modify their hats, right? I got one pork pie that I wore. Did I wear that yesterday? The day before yesterday? I don't know. I wore it. It's my first pork pie, and it had one of these Western rope bands, right? Western rope ribbons, or just ropes. And I didn't like the look. I bought it despite that rope, and I know I can change it out easily. Like, the information's out there. I'm just somebody that, like, I get really like weird about, like, maybe it's my OCD that kicks in, that I'm going to somehow ruin the hat, or somebody put it on there for a reason, and now I'm kind of like tarnishing their legacy. My brain comes up with so many weird things. I don't pretend to like be the sanest individual out there. I think we have to be a little bit like, I don't know if I want to be too sane. I want to have a little edge, but that's kind of like my confession, that I'm a little weird that way. And I know it can be easily done. Ian says that he's done it. That's the extent of how he fiddles with the hat. But we know, like, right, well, we've kind of already expressed that Paul, his hat journey came from consumer, somebody that used the hat for a functional basis. Then he got into the modification and restoration of the hats. And then now he's a full-blown hat maker. And I got to love that. It's a stepwise approach. And I got a feeling that if we talk to a lot more hatters, they probably had something very similar. Their journey is probably very similar to Paul's. Just not knowing, I'm going to guess that's probably a common story.
I think so.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, I think so. I think the other thing is having the courage and actually the ability to invest not only time but also some money, because there is still a significant amount of money in the equipment if you buy the right equipment and so on. And like you say, buy once and get it right rather than buy twice. And I think it's one of those things that when I look at what's his name, Robert Gault, his equipment just goes on and on and on, and he'll buy equipment from hatters that have retired or gone out of business, and sadly we don't have many of those in the UK anymore. They've all gone, and so there's limited opportunity for me to pick up secondhand equipment, and so it's it's more on an expensive basis. But when you think, like, to do a hat block and a brim block and a stand is like £800, and you've got to do that multiple times. It soon adds up. So I do understand that the youngsters, they need help to be able to either be sponsored by somebody or at least get their hats sold so they can reinvest.
Correct. It's very much like an apprenticeship. We talked about like mentors. I know a lot of folks will feel really weird about like being a mentor, but there's no one size fits all, right? Nobody says you
Mm,
have to be an expert, or you can very much be a mentor to somebody. Meaning, like we talked about Kevin. Kevin doesn't make his hats, but I consider him every bit a hatter because he's been in the business for 30 plus years, right? As a salesman, right? So regardless of how you feel about salesmen, there's nothing wrong with being a salesman and not a hat maker. Those are important. That's an important position. Kevin's built a lot of contacts that way. So I very much consider Kevin an ambassador and a mentor to a lot of folks. I know he was for me. And regardless, even if you know more than Kevin, he has probably mentored a lot of folks. It has nothing to do with how your knowledge base and all that. It really is kind of like, this is somebody that inspires me to want to become a better hat person, and know more. If you do that, you're already a mentor, whether you feel comfortable with it or not. It's just the way it is. And this is, like I said, it's such a beautiful hobby, and it's such a thing that's given me so much and so much joy that if I somehow am inspire somebody with this channel, just one person, this has already been worthwhile, because at the very least, I owe it that much. I owe this great hat hobby and this subculture that much, that this is at least what I could do.
mm. I mean, the other big question is, what is enough hats? And people say to me, Paul,
Yeah,
if I've got a standard wardrobe, I've got a couple of suits, sports jackets,
yeah,
trousers. I like my blues, I like my browns. Occasionally I wear black.
right.
I got children, so I go out with a jeans and t-shirt on. What
Mhm.
type of hats should I have in my wardrobe, and
Yeah,
how many should I have? I say,
yeah.
look, you're asking a chap that had 60 hats in his collection before he decided to
Wow.
start making them, and it's like,
Yeah,
they're stored under the bed, on top of the wardrobe, in the garage. I mean, it's every place my wife was looking for space to put
yeah,
something, there was another hat. And so it's a difficult one, but I think the interesting thing, though, really is, in all seriousness, that you could probably put a collection together of about 10 hats for
yeah,
different occasions, and there'd
yeah,
be classic shapes, like your Stratoliner shape, your open road, your trilby, your high fronted trilbies and fedoras and things, and probably enjoy it. And then from there, it's having a discipline, so that if you think, well, 10 hats is enough, if you
right,
want to get another one because, quite frankly, something comes along that takes your eye, then
right.
sell one of the ones you've got, because
Yes.
there does seem to be a buoyant market. I mean, I've traded in buying and selling Lock and Co hats, and
Yeah,
I found that I've made good money on Lock and Co hats. So
yeah,
you can still buy them, steam them, shape them, wear them, and then sell them, and you can enjoy a little bit of profit, or in fact get your money
yeah.
back. And
Right.
that to me is a great hobby. That's how it should be.
Agreed. Agreed. You don't go into that expecting that you're going to make some sort of a living, but I'm sure some people, excuse me, I'm sure some people have the energy and the inclination, and they are able to do quite well for themselves. But it's just fun because
Mm.
I get to go and, right. So when I do a deal, right, and I mentioned this in the past, I don't consider myself a hat seller, right? Usually what happens is somebody will see me wearing a hat, and especially on Facebook, I've had that happen on Facebook in particular. Not so much the Fedora Lounge, and I might have like a pet theory about why that's the case, but Facebook definitely. I will post a hat, and essentially somebody will go and drop me a message. Maybe they'll send me a friend request first, and if I see him wearing a hat, I'm gonna probably accept the friend request. And they'll say, "Hey, Luke, I saw." It's like, great. They'll always start off, great hat collection. You know what I mean? Love it. I just wonder, do you sell hats? I'm like, well, I'm not a hat seller. It's like, because if you ever wanted to sell a hat, I'm like, I'm touched. I'm already touched by the fact that they were like, they saw whatever grabbed me when I got my hat, right? When I decided to, I call it rehome the hat, and I bought the hat. I feel like they recreated that magic, right? They saw the same thing that I saw, or maybe something better. And I'll always be gracious because I'm just touched that somebody like liked my hat that much. And then I will always say, you know, because I do have some hats that I do put for sale, but I always say, make me an offer. You know, if it's a reasonable offer, then the hat's yours. You know, as long as we work out shipping and delivery and all that good stuff, you know, I would do that. And I've been so touched that I'm like, wow, somebody liked my hat. You know, like I said, I'm kind of like a little bit on the fringe in that a lot of folks like that tall crown. A lot of my hats are not that. It's just not my style. Again, I'm not opposed to it. I happen to appreciate that style and love looking at that style. I just haven't in my hat journey. I haven't gotten to the point where I acquired a hat like that. But so I'm like so touched that somebody even saw that hat and that they wanted to make it theirs. That usually we'll come up to an agreement and then I'll try to ship the hat out, right? So like if I have a gentleman in Utah, which is like a decent, it's all kind of on the west side of the country. He's bought 2 of my hats already, and he wants to buy a third. And the very last deal that I made, he paid me via Venmo, I believe, or PayPal, and I shipped the hat the very same day. And he remarked, he was like, "Whoa, I didn't expect that." I sent him the tracking information. I told him, I said, I don't know if I can do this every single time, but I know that when you are like waiting for that next hat to come in, right? When you happen to buy it online and you're waiting to ship, or they'll buy like one of Paul's creation, and Paul like has to like he might have to make it, then he has to get it shipped out to you and all that other good stuff. I know what it's like to wait on that hat. You know, sometimes I'll buy a hat as a way to like bide the time for that hat that I'm really waiting for. So I just said, I just try to respect that as a fellow hat enthusiast and as a fellow kid in the candy store. And I'll go and I'll try to ship it out as quickly as I can because I know that anticipation. I empathize with it, right?
It's a very good point you make, actually, Luke, because what I've found, and I've had a lot of respect for, is that people like myself are asking clients to part with money before they actually see the goods.
Yeah.
Wow, 4,000 smoking pipes.
That's a lot of pipes.
Wow. Yeah, that's a wall. Yeah, when people are trusting you, basically, you know, they don't know you. They have got to know you a little bit by talking through their requirements for the hats, and you've had the opportunity to try and explain to them a little bit more about what you do and how you do it and so on. What I've also found is throughout the build, I've sent people pictures, or I've always suggested that before I send the hat to them, we have a Zoom call and we actually go through the sizes. So I have a checklist that I go through when taking down the information, and then we double check that checklist against the hat when it's been made, and then they say, okay, so they'll pay, and then I'll ship it. Now, if it's in the UK, I usually say, look, I'll ship it within 3 days. Actually, I ship it 24 hours. Because what I've found is that I've got proper hat boxes that have been made up for me, so that the hats arrive in good condition. And in fact, if the courier only has them for 24 hours, they've got less time to damage the box or damage the hat. And it's worked out fine for me so far. And I don't mind subsidizing. You know, I ask people £7 in the UK for postage. Sometimes it costs me £10 or whatever, plus the box is a further cost as well. But at the end of the day, if you get that box and there's a letter from me saying thank you, details about how to put simple things like how to put a hat on, and in the movies you always see people put them up by this. In fact, no,
I still do that too. Yeah, you're supposed to do that. Yep. Do what Paul's saying.
So it's things like that I just put in writing to them and talk about. If the hat gets wet, that's fine. Depending on the material, it'll be more water resistant than other, but don't put it by a radiator to dry it. Let it just dry naturally. What's this? Oh, oh, well done, Morgan. Thanks for saying that.
I'm gonna chalk that up to Paul. Like I said, this is like this show really is the start of the show, right? So like when I had the vision for the show, it was one for people like Morgan, right? Well, Morgan's kind of like what I call a hardcore audience, right? Like besides being a moderator, like I've seen some of Morgan's hats and like her passion. Ian, Ian, I think I might have seen around as well, probably on Facebook. But I'll maybe correct me, Ian, if that's. I know that's my hardcore, right? This is my base. But all I want is one to help my base. The folks like Morgan, no matter what I say, Morgan's still going to be a hat nerd, right? But I'm also doing this for the fringe folk, like the folks that are like on there, and they're a little curious. They're like, I don't know, Luke. I mean, or maybe they're just a collector, right? That never wears a hat, right? We know that exists. I like to call them show queens. Like they'll have like in car collecting, they'll call garage queens. Cars that never probably see the road. They probably have a low amount of mileage, but they're there because they're the owner either loves the idea of owning that car or just wants to look at it and wax it. And I'm sure we have that. We have those kind of nerds in the hat community, and I totally respect it. Like I said, there's no really wrong way to do this hobby. The only wrong way is if you go out there and start like becoming a curmudgeon, somebody that's like not a pleasant personality and maybe causing somebody that doesn't know any better to move away from that, or maybe disparaging them because of the type of hat they own. And I don't like that. I don't stand for that. I feel like there's really very little place in our community for that. Luckily, we just happen to be a community that has very few of those folks, but they're out there. I run into them. And luckily, again, their voice gets stifled really quickly, because the nice thing about our community is that we got a lot of folks that won't suffer fools very much, right? So usually somebody like myself or somebody like Paul or somebody else that doesn't mind standing up for their fellow community will say, we'll put an end to that. And if I have more control on this forum, and I won't stand for that. I won't have anybody disrespect my guests or any of my audience, because again, I do the same. I treat this almost like I do in real life, because I'll be the person that defends somebody, for better or worse, because I've been there, and I don't, me being a target is one thing, but me seeing somebody else being targeted, I just won't stand for that. We don't need that. If you're one of those folks and you're seeing this, please stop that. I mean, if you don't have anything nice to say, just be quiet, right? It's better to just, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all, because you never know who's watching, right? I always have that model, like you never know who's watching, and that's why I try not to engage with those individuals, but they do exist. But luckily, folks like Morgan and Ian and yourself, Paul, you guys are like the rule rather than the exception in this fine hobby, and I just am a better person for it. So, wow, what a great show. Morgan it gave us a really great compliment. If you are just joining us, I have John Paul Murphy of Passion4Hats and PJ Murphy and Son, British Bespoke hat maker. Paul has been gracious enough to come on the channel and share a lot of what he knows and some of his great hats. If you've seen that information at the bottom, you'll see Paul's YouTube channel as well as his business and his website. Again, I don't make any money off of this. Again, not that I don't like money, but Paul's basically doing me a favor here by sharing his knowledge and his passion for hats. I think that's quite an apt YouTube channel, because you can see it, right? There's no better name for that than that. So shout out to Paul. I think this might be actually a good time to I really like Paul. Obviously, you're welcome here every single time. Even if you don't want to talk about your hats and just talk anything, essentially, like I just can't get enough of it. So definitely hit up Paul if you want. I think he has his email address on his website. Help support Paul and all the other fellow great hat makers that we have in this community, because again, we owe it to ourselves and to our fellow brethren, and to kind of support each other. So I am going to close this out. I don't know. This is like, if you're new to this is a new format for me. I just got new software. Paul, thanks for taking a chance on me, even though I'm not I'm not like the best steward of technology. I try to figure out as much as I can, but I think we had a really great show so far. I tell you.
I'm happy to do a double act anytime, as they say. It's it is a passion of mine, and it's lovely that we've got a few people on that are listening in live, and I'm sure there'll be more people that will listen in when it's posted on YouTube. So, and if it just, as you said, if it touched one person, great. Okay, so reach out. Let's keep talking, Luke, and we'll see where it goes.
That sounds good. Well, Paul, thank you so much. Shout out to Paul of Passion4Hats and PJ Murphy and Son. Definitely hit him up. You can hit me up if you need any more information on how to get a hold of Paul, just in case. But shout out to my two moderators, Morgan and Ian, for doing, essentially it's doing like asking some really great questions, right? We're all kids in the candy stores, right? I think we're all kind of like the hardcore folks. But again, we don't, I do it for you guys, but I also do it for those folks that are on the fringe, right? Like I said, if you are not, if you meet somebody, a budding hat nerd, take the time and engage them, because again, one, I'd love to have them here. And even as a guest, I'm not opposed to putting on somebody, a novice, right? We haven't, like I would call an ambassador and an expert in Paul, but I will put on a novice on here because I want to make sure that we have folks that can speak to all walks of the hat journey, right? So shout out to Paul again. Thank you. Shout out to Ian and Morgan and all you guys that might have tuned in but didn't interact, and also might tune in later. I'm Luke, and this is Paul. We're signing off for Hat Chat number 19. And I'm just going to ask one favor. Besides hitting up, like, and subscribe, just make sure, if you could just do me one thing, stay hatting, my friend. Ciao, and have a great day. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys.